Hi, welcome back to Travel to Some Places and Happy New Year. So I thought I'd start off this new year with a video about the top things you need to watch out for if you're booking a flight in 2025, because there are changes and also some trends I've seen when booking flights that you might need to be aware of, especially if you haven't been frequently booking flights or it's been a while since you've booked a flight online. These tips and news information will help you save money, save time, and avoid frustrations that can be caused by not knowing this type of information and how to most efficiently book your flights. So, and then I'm going to be getting back into traveling in a couple of weeks, and then it'll be more of the travel videos. So this is a travel tip. So that's number one thing that you need to watch out for when you're booking your flight, to check and see if carry-ons are included in your flight, or you could end up paying more. So perhaps you're booking a flight and you think you're saving, $50 or something like that, and then you just end up paying that for your carry-on luggage. So, and especially if you're booking economy, there are greater chances that your carry-on is not going to be included. And then in that same vein, for number two, the number two thing that you need to watch out for when you're booking a flight in 2025 is that now there's this feature on certain bookings where you can choose to reserve for a fee your space in the overhead bin. It's like every nook and cranny in a plane now you have to pay for. So you can reserve on certain airlines, you can reserve this overhead bin in economy. And that also means that if you don't, and you've got hand luggage, carry-ons, and if there's no space for your overhead, then they could check that luggage in. Which is something maybe you wouldn't want to have happen, especially if you've put, like I put valuables in there that I don't want any of my luggage to be lost, but some certain things, maybe jewelry or something like that, that I really don't want, that's irreplaceable, photographs or something like that, and you've got it in your carry-on, and you don't want that being checked in. So you just need to be careful of that. You got to check your ticket before booking to see if carry-on luggage is included. And they've got these, oftentimes you'll get these little icons and stuff, and you have to decipher, is that personal luggage and hand luggage and then checked baggage. So just watch out for that, because that's no fun. You don't want to try and start unpacking or getting all your stuff out of your carry-on, trying to stuff it into your handbag or something like that as your flight's about to take off. So that's number two. These two things are going to be more frequent when you're booking flights. So those are two big things. Then number three, which is not new, but now it's becoming a very common thing, whereas it was not so common before. So let's say last year you didn't travel, or maybe you got lucky and you didn't travel with certain airlines and your checked bag was included. Now, more and more often you're going to see that your checked luggage is not included. So let's say you think that you take a certain flight at a certain time and you're saving $100. And then you later find out that you have to pay for your bag or bags going there and then on the way back. So your actual flight ticket is a lot more costly than you thought it was, and maybe the next best price might have been the better option for you, because that might have included your carry-on, your checked luggage. So those three things for your baggage you really need to check out for, because you can save money. If, like, let's say there's a round trip for $1,000 and then there's another round trip for $1,080, let's say, and your $1,000 round trip ticket does not include your checked in baggage, whereas the 1080 ticket does. You're saving money by, paying for that supposed more expensive ticket, when in fact it's not actually more expensive, because you're going to have to add in that checked baggage when you're checking out. So those three things for your carry-ons and your checked baggage, you need to watch out for when you're booking before paying, to make sure that those things are included, because it can be several $100s depending on if you've got checked baggage and carry-ons, and whether or not that airline is going to charge you. And this is especially, economy, basic, economy light, especially these seats. Okay, so those three things aside, now let's get to actually booking. So it's quite common now, or a lot more people are using aggregator sites for their booking, as opposed to actually walking into a travel agency or calling up a travel agency to book flights, or even going directly to an airline. So aggregators, just in case you don't know, I know there's many seasoned flyers out there, but just in case, if you're not familiar, you don't usually prefer to book online, or you prefer to book with airlines directly, or you have your favorite travel agent in your hometown, you might not be familiar with booking with aggregators. So aggregators, examples are Skyscanner, Flight Network, Expedia, Kayak, just to name a few. So essentially what these sites do is that they quickly scan all these other sites, airline sites, all these ticketing sites, and come back with a bunch of results for you in one place. Great. That means that you don't have to go to each airline, or you don't have to go to several different sites to check out the different prices, because they're all displayed for you in this one aggregator site. So you would think that since everything is displayed in this one site, you're just going to have all the best deals, and then you choose your time, you choose your date, you choose the best ticket for you, and bada bum, you're ready. But that's not the case, because all aggregators don't have the same offerings. Yes, you'll see many repeated, if you check, let's say, 3 different aggregators, yes, you're going to see some of the same flights on the 3 aggregators. Slightly different prices, and you're not going to see all availabilities. You might see a local carrier in a certain aggregator site, whereas you won't see it in another site. You might see a certain airline. Did I just say that, airline? Yes. And so that means that simply going to one aggregator site and thinking you've got all the best options sitting right there in front of you, and that's what you're going to choose from, is not a good idea. I would say at least go to 3 different aggregators before you decide to book. If cost is important to you, and the route is important to you, layover is important to you. I'm thinking that's important for everyone, but maybe it's not, I don't know. But if it's important for you, then definitely check out 3 different aggregators before making your final decision on booking your flight, because I've saved several $100s simply by just doing that, and just discovering like these 2 aggregators have basically the same offerings, and a third one has like an airline that's not showing up on those 2. And I guess that just has to do with, I don't know, agreements, whatnot. But anyhow, it does happen. I know for a fact, because I've been, because I do this and I've seen it. So this isn't just some theory. It's true that all aggregators are not going to be offering you the same flight options. So check out 3 to save money, save time, save hassles, save frustrations. Okay, so that was number 4 tip. Okay, number 5. So this is like a huge one. If you're taking a connecting flight, yes, ideally we all want to take direct flights, but if you're taking, perhaps you're taking a trip to a town, a city, country that doesn't have the largest airport, It's a smaller location, not as much traffic. There aren't going to be perhaps direct flights to it. So you'll end up flying to an airport, a larger airport, and from that airport you're going to end up flying to your destination. So in this case, there's going to be lots of options. One option, and it's going to be the cheapest option that you see on these aggregator sites, is the change airport site. Like now I think they're starting to write this in like a red so you notice it more, but it was previously written kind of small, maybe we didn't even notice it, but the flight is going to be really cheap and you're gonna think, wow, $300 compared to $1,000, this is fantastic. But these flights, change airport flights, means you actually have to change your physical airport in your connecting locale. So, for example, you have a connecting flight in London. So you land in Heathrow, and then the connecting flight is in Luton, at the Luton airport. So you get there, and then you have to do the whole thing, go through security checks, border checks, get your luggage, get out. Then you've got to find transportation, maybe taxi, take that taxi to the next airport, and then go through the whole thing again of going through checking in, security, luggage, all of that before you board that connecting flight. Now, you can save $300-400 maybe, and that's great, but is the frustration worth it? One, and secondly, you don't know exactly how much time it's going to take. Like, let's see your layover window, let's say it's not that long. So you've got to factor in your getting out and gathering your luggage, which we know sometimes can take forever to pick up your luggage, even up to an hour. And then you've got to take a vehicle or some form of transportation to get to that second airport, which can also take quite a bit of time. And the whole checking in process can take quite a bit of time, which means altogether it is possible to miss that connecting flight. One. Two, you also need to have a visa for that country that you're going through to get to that connecting airport. So when you're just going through getting your connection in the same airport, you don't need to go into the country, therefore you don't need a visa. But if you're actually going into the country and driving along their roads, you need to be able to legally enter that country. So that's one thing. And secondly, it's just that time crunch, the frustration, just especially you're traveling with family, little kids, just doing that whole thing. Is it worth it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But just make sure if you do decide to do that, make sure that window of time between the two flights gives you enough time to get from one airport to the other, and then also factor in the cost of that transportation that you're going to take from one airport to the other and add it onto the cost of the flight, so you get more of an accurate representation of what it's actually going to cost you. So that's one big thing. So make sure to check out for it when you're selecting your flight. Definitely it's gotten a lot better, so you notice it more. You're able to see when it says that. Okay, next one. This is probably the next least expensive flight in terms of connections that you're going to be, and this is the self-transfer option. So I'm seeing a lot more of these self-transfers, and some sites are even calling it a hack. And it's not a hack. It's, in a sense, I suppose, but not really, because what it means, and oftentimes the change airport location, there'll be a bigger gap of time between one flight and the connecting flight. You'll have several hours, maybe 4 hours, 7 hours, like a lot more time, a lot of the times. But with these self-transfer options, it means you take your flight to an airport, then what you might have to do is go ahead and collect that luggage, and then go back and check in your luggage. So you have to do that whole process again. Now, if you're in a small airport, one that doesn't get international flights, well, chances are if you're doing a self-transfer, you're going to be in a larger airport. But anyhow, if you're in a smaller airport, maybe it's not such a big deal if you have to self-transfer from one flight to another flight. But in a larger airport, for example, Frankfurt, where there's trains to get from one terminal to another terminal, and your flight might land in one terminal and your gate is in another terminal, and you've got to take their Sky Train to get to it. Like, all of this takes time. First of all, getting off the plane takes time. Then going and getting your luggage, whatever security you have to go through, all the checking in again, and then getting to the terminal and the gate where you catch your connecting flight. All of that can take easily an hour and a half. It may be more, you know? And so that self-transfer option might save you a few bucks, but in the end, you could also miss your flight, which has happened to me, which is why this one, believe me, it can happen because you think you have enough time. But if your plane from your destination even leaves 20 minutes later, that can just throw everything off. So if you choose the self-transfer option, where you will be saving some money as opposed to a non-self-transfer option, make sure that that there is enough time for you to do all of that stuff and catch your next flight, because missing your next flight, then ending up having to stay in the airport for hours and hours and hours, like, that just is not worth, saving 50 bucks, I would think, especially when you've got places to go and things to do, reservations, etc. So those things definitely watch out for when you're booking a flight, because there seems to be more and more of self-transfer options, ticket options out there. Okay, so next one, let me just check my notes here. Okay, so next one actually is along the same theme as what I just mentioned in terms of self-transfer, but this is in a non-self-transfer situation where maybe where you're connecting, but you don't have to do the whole getting your luggage and then checking in, going through security, all of that sort of stuff. You're just transferring, you're landing in an airport and then taking another flight. And actually the security thing you might have to still do. But so that's why I mentioned this one particularly for connecting flights. Make sure to understand where this, which airport this connecting flight is at. If it's a very, very busy airport with various terminals, and it can take a long time for you to get from one side to another side, be very careful of how much time you have, your layover time. Like, let's say your layover time is 45 minutes, but you're landing in a gigantic airport where there's several terminals, and it could take you a lot of time to disembark from your plane to go to the gate for your next plane. Just factor in whether or not it's worth it to take that particular flight, knowing that even a few minutes, off, if your plane is, and like getting off of the plane, anything like that, that could lead to you missing your flight. And how you've got to, I think boarding is usually cut off about 15 minutes before the flight is supposed to take off. So make sure that time in between is sufficient for you to do all of the running around. So it might be a good idea just to check out the airport where you're connecting to see how big it is, and where the airlines land, where the one airline lands, where the one would take off from, things like that. You won't know for certain what it's going to be, but just to get an idea of, what the layout is sort of like and what it's going to take for you, or the worst case scenario, how far one gate could be from another. And you know, if it's just a limited amount of time for the layover, like I don't even like 1 hour layovers, because too many times, like my original flight has left a little bit later, and then it's just all this frustration. You're sitting on the plane, you're looking at your watch, and you're just like, oh my gosh, am I going to get there on time? Am I going to get there on time? How do I fly over all these people in this plane and get off the plane first? And it's just a whole lot of that. So, you know, there's no way to predict what's going to happen, but planning in the best way possible might help you avoid having these unnecessary stressful moments by booking a flight that gives you enough time to connect your flight. Maybe you end up waiting a little bit, you know, that's okay. Watch the planes come and go. How often do you do that? I mean, unless you're a frequent flyer, maybe you don't do that, and that's fun. Have a little cheeky coffee, and at least you're relaxed and you're not, you know, worried about catching your flight and arriving at your destination on time. Okay, next one. Okay, so if you're using aggregators, which a lot of people are, and I think I didn't mention this, the reason a lot of people do use aggregators is that the cost is less expensive than actually directly going to an airline or even give an agent. So if you're using an aggregator site, what they're going to do is give you a list of prices from other sites and airlines, even other aggregator sites is possible. So you'll see a price there. Let's say it's $1,000, just to make it easy. Sometimes it'll say from $1,000. So you click on it for details, etc., and then it takes you over to the site that's actually selling the ticket. And you might be filling out the whole thing, and you know, the thing is, the price that you see on the aggregator side might not be the same price that you're going to find when you get onto the website where that price is supposed to be. And then you can be in for a bit of a shock, because it's not like it's just only $5 or $10 different. It can be significantly different than what the number that you originally saw and the number that shows up. $1,000 versus $1,300, something like that. And it happens, and you might just sort of assume, okay, that's the price, and not even really double check the actual price that you see on the website. So let's say you're Skyscanner, and then it directs you over to the actual, say, Condor Airline, and you get there and the price could be, you know, completely different. So always double check the price. Don't just assume that because you clicked on a price on an aggregator site that you're gonna go over to the site that they're showing you and sending you to, and it's gonna be the same price. It could be different. And also, sometimes what you'll see is there'll be a number. Let's say the price is $1,000. You'll click on it, it'll take you to another page, and on that page it'll be a list of 4 or 5 other sites which will have that number and then slightly different fares, and you can choose one of those fares. And then you won't know until you click on one of those sites whether or not, or what's actually included in terms of luggage, seat selection, and all of that, until you get to the site. Like, let's say you go from Skyscanner and you choose mytrip.com, and you get to mytrip.com, and then you're going to see, you know, what's the actual final price and everything that's included. So it can take a little bit of time, but so the big tip here is, don't just assume that the price that you see in the first place is the price that you're actually going to be paying. Double check to see that when you get on the site that you're sent to, that the price is the same. And if it's not, go back, choose a different flight, check a different site, etc. But just always double check, because this happens. I've seen it happen. Okay, next one. Okay, so after I went through all of that stuff about self-transfers, this is one hack to save you money if you are going if you are in need of a connecting flight, or the results you're getting are for connecting flights. So think of it this way. There's a million different combinations of, you could end up going from one city to another city, and then from that city to your destination. Like, there's so many different ways, like crazy ways. Sometimes, okay, let's say you're in New York, and then you go via London to Rome. I don't know if that even happens. But the point is that there's many different combinations of airlines that can get you from one place to another place. So it's not always going to be the best combination for you. Sometimes what you can do is, okay, let's say you check an aggregator site, and it shows you that you want to get to Belgrade, Serbia from Toronto, Canada. And, excuse me, the flight's going to take you from Toronto to Frankfurt. And then the second airline is going to take you from Frankfurt to Belgrade. Instead of doing that, you can take the flight from the one airport to the other major airport, and then you yourself can book that second flight with a local carrier. And that can be significantly less expensive, I know, because I've seen that. So a lot of times, the way these flights are laid out for you, it's not going to necessarily give you the best way to do your trip or the least expensive way. It's going to be whatever fits into, I don't know, the algorithm, etc. So oftentimes, especially if you're traveling to Europe, South Asia, there are regional local carriers that can get you from a major airport to the smaller airport a lot less expensively than if you book through one of these aggregator sites. So you can choose to book the two flights separately and save several $100s doing it that way. And yes, this will be like a self-transfer, because you will have to, it's not like a self-transfer, you are self-transferring. However, you're doing it on your own terms. You can choose the time of that second flight, like give yourself, 4 or 5 hours. Or you can give yourself a whole day and maybe explore the city, an extra city, and then take that second leg of your trip the second day. The point is that you have control of when you're going to book that transfer flight. You'll save several $100s. You can explore a new city. You can just be more relaxed knowing that you're just going to end up arriving at that connector city, and that you have several hours. You can grab lunch, dinner, do a little shopping, whatever you want to do before you have to get that connecting flight, and you can get a better deal than if you book it all together. So that's one travel hack that always works. I shouldn't say always works. In certain countries where there's lots of local regional carriers that do these, these local trips, for, you'll see like flights for like $70, $80. Here in North America, like it's not that easy to see such inexpensive flights, but in certain areas you can see that the local airlines really provide you with great deals. So in that case, it's a great idea, especially if you have flexibility to book the trip separately yourself. and that's a great way to save money. And I think those are the big things to watch out for if you're booking online for your next flight. There are ways to save money. There's ways for you not to be stressed and frustrated, simply by just taking these things into account and just being really careful, reading everything before you book your flight. And also just a couple of other things. Round trips aren't always necessarily less expensive than one ways, and especially if you're going for a longer period of time or you have a little bit of flexibility, you can always do one ways each way. It's not always more expensive as it used to be. And it is true that flights are cheaper on certain days than others. Definitely, if you're like Friday, Sunday, Mondays are usually a lot more expensive than the other days. So if you can manage to get away on like middle of the weekdays, Saturdays also it's a lot less expensive to travel on. That's a good way to save money, get a better flight. And then what else? Yeah, I think those are some great things to watch out for and to help you have a better experience flying this year. Just make sure to read all of the fine print and make sure that you know what you're getting. And yeah, so that's all for me for this video. I hope these suggestions are helpful to you. It's just based on my experiences that I'm sharing this. If you have any questions, you're welcome to leave them in the comments. And if I can answer your question, I definitely will do my best to, or I can maybe send you to a resource that can help you if I can't. Anyhow, so yay, it's a new year, 2025. It's like in front of us, it's like an open highway, and there's so many possibilities for things that can happen and things you can make happen and all the adventures you can have. And so I wish you happy travels, happy new year once again, and see you in the next video. Bye.